Just to button this whole thing up in terms of how it looks going forward for solutions for Israel, because you see a lot of the same old. I'm very tired of the whole like, we need to discuss the two-state solution and bring it back. It's like, 5, 6 times a charm, guys. But how do you see that vision translate into what Israel could look like as a single state, prosperous and connected, bringing the godliness to the world? Like, how does that look going forward, given all these modern day solutions?
Right. So first of all, any solution that has to be implemented is one that must focus on solving the injustices that both populations face and fulfilling the aspirations that both populations have. If you actually break down what Palestinians need and what Israelis need, they don't contradict. And if you break down what we suffer, solving them doesn't contradict either. And a two-state solution does neither for either populations. Palestinians, for the most part, want to live from the river to the sea. Jews, for the most part, want to live from the river to the sea. And there are enough of us on both sides that would fight and die in order to prevent this situation from happening where we're splitting our land. And I think for a lot of Westerners that come from a two-state solution perspective, it's kind of like, okay, you go to one corner, you go to one corner, you can't live together, so you have to separate. But this land is not just a piece of property or territory to buy, sell, and trade. It's our soulmate. It's not something that you can cut up. There's the story of King Solomon, right, where two mothers come to his court and say, we're the mothers of this one baby. And King Solomon doesn't know who the mother is, right? They don't have DNA test. So what does he say? He says, let me cut it in half. You get one half and you get the other. And one mother says, okay, as long as I get half, I'm okay with that. And the other mother says, actually, no, it's not my baby. It's her baby. Let her take the whole thing. And King Solomon is able to see who the real mother is because the real mother would never cut her baby in half. And if this is truly our land, we will never cut that land in half. Now, how do we create a reality that fulfills the aspirations of both? First of all, I think the political system that we have in Israel is a system that doesn't work. The system for homogeneous thinking, like in Europe, where in England you have, usually the same train of thought. But when you have two Jews and at least 3 opinions, right, it doesn't work. So in the Knesset, you see many different parties, and it's a system that is already focused on division because you have the left and the right, which the right in Israel champions security, economy, and national identity, and the left champions human rights, social values, poverty, environment, and those things don't contradict one another. Right, they're extensions of one truth that we've positioned as opposing to one another. So we divide the population, and already we have a system that is dividing people. And then we have a system that, because you can have a new election at any moment, because you have so many different parties, and to gain, you have to create a coalition, but that can break at any moment. You're thinking on the short term. Politicians are only thinking, what can I do now that I can get a quick return that I can use in the next election, which might be next week? And we're not thinking long term and in a way of united. So already I don't say one state, because one state implies continuing the current government we have and extending it on the rest of Israel, for which I think the government we have has to change. We have to create something new that's even more democratic, in the sense that people have a relationship with the power, in a sense that's more Jewish, in a sense that's more open to non-Jews living in this land, and something that actually works. But I say one civilization solution, because this is one land that is accessible and must be accessible to all the peoples from the land, including Israelis and Palestinians. Now, when you think of the non-negotiables for Palestinians, for them it's right of return. Right of return for all Palestinians, those living in Jordan, those living in refugee camps in Lebanon and other places, those living in the diaspora and other places. So, when we as Jews first hear the right of return for Palestinians, we're like, wait a minute, you want to bring in millions of people and all of a sudden we don't have the majority, especially when so many of those people don't like us? Like, that's not a possibility.
Sounds suicidal for Israel.
Right. So the reason why Jews reject this idea of a right of return is not because we're against Palestinians being here for the sake of them Palestinians, is because their coming here would remove something from us. Right. So we're not against their aspirations because of their aspirations. We experience their aspirations as an attack against us because of how it could look like. However, if we were to change the pop culture, if Israel were to realize that, okay, we need to remove Hamas, we need to remove the Palestinian Authority, we need to invest in education, we need to create freedom of speech for Palestinians for different ideas to exist, we need to empower the local leaders, that the true leaders of Palestinians, we need to invest in infrastructure, we need to invest in roads and job opportunities and education, and the relationship of Israel was different than the one that it currently is, you would see a mindset shift within the Palestinian population. But then the question becomes, what about the demographics? Right? Well, there's already several things that we can do. The West Bank, Judea, and Samaria, we can do it into a sort of federation system or a canton system that has checks and balances, that in local places has more local power, less national power, which is actually what Palestinians prefer. Most Palestinians don't like the fact that there's a Palestinian Authority controlling them. They care about the family in their kfal, in their village that controls. You go to most Israelis, they don't know who the mayor of Tel Aviv, of Kfar Saba, Herzliya is. So we care more on the national level, where they care more on the local level. There is a way of creating something, but something that we don't talk about much, unfortunately, in our generation, and B'ezrat Hashem we will soon, is the tribes of Israel. Now, us as Jewish population, we're 15 million Jews.
Let's go there.
And those 15 million are descendants of 2.5 tribes. We're Yehuda, Binyamin, and half of Levi. I'm from Shevet Levi from both sides of my family, right? And so we have 9.5 other tribes out there that have yet to return to our people. That in the Torah it says that in the times of Mashiach, the tribes of Israel reunite from the four corners of the earth, which is a flipped equation, right? Answer is times of Mashiach equals bring the tribes of Israel from the four corners of the earth, flip it, bring the tribes of Israel from the four corners of the earth, and you get to
I'm not
Mashiach.
good at math, but I hear you.
You get to Mashiach.
Yeah.
And if you bring back this population, right now the descendants of Israel, Zera Israel, or the dispersed of Israel, Nitche Israel, are about 500 million.
Where they at?
Four corners of the earth, Africa, Asia, South America, and we're working on a project to locate them and bring them back to the consciousness of our generation. But the descendants of these communities are 500 million. Not all of them are identifying as Jews like me and you. Just like you go in America and you have 5.4 million Jews and 60 to 80% assimilation rates, not every Jew is identifying as a Jew. And so if you look at those that are, it's about 20% of this population. And over
identify in practice?
Yes,
or?
identify in practice. On different levels, right?
Yeah.
More religious, less religious.
But there's an 80% that doesn't even know they're Jewish?
Some of them don't know. Some of them know and reject it. Some of them know and don't care. Some of them are like, oh, well, we're something else now, so this is what we are. Just like Jews in America, right? And about 20% relate to it, connect to it, identify as being a part of Am Yisrael, some religious, some not. And half of them want to make Aliyah. That's 50 million people. If you bring back 50 million people
bring them out,
back home, it solves all of our problems.
Where are they specifically? Can you just, sorry, is that what you're going to ask?
Where they're going to live, you can.
Is there room?
Is there room
There's
for
room.
50 million
There's
people?
for sure room in Israel. And actually, I think, this might be like a new idea. But
everyone adds a few bedrooms.
This might be a new idea, but just throwing out there because it's something that is brought up. When you try to really find solutions, if you look at Jordan, right, which is 70 to 80% Palestinian. The Jordanian country is an invention. It's basically you had two families in Arabia that fought each other. Hashemite, and he knows a lot.
Yeah.
Michael thinks we like to play dumb, but
You think you know somebody.
That's why it functions. They have a Hashemite kingdom, and that's why they're able to make sort of unilateral decisions on peace with Israel.
Right.
Well, Transjordan, you're saying it was Hashemite versus the kingdom of Saud?
Exactly. And so they
Boom!
They fought each other, and the Saudi family won, which eventually became called Saudi Arabia, but the Hashemite family was kicked out, and they had other resources that the British wanted, so they gave 3/5 of the mandate to Palestine, Transjordan, to the Hashemite kingdom. So it's a fake country with a foreign government ruling Palestinians that identify with the rest of Israel.
The same population of Arabs living in Israel in 48 were also in Jordan as a product of geography.
And living across and traveling across one.
And it was Transjordan, so it was very progressive at the time.
Nice. And so also
it identified as Jordan, but it was actually Palestinian. Transjordan. That's clever.
But if you look at also this piece of land is where Jews were living. You had tribes of Israel there as well. It's our indigenous land.
Are there Palestinians that are tribes of Judah here? Is that what we're saying?
30 to 60% of Palestinians are actually descendants of Jews.
Oh my goodness.
And if you look at places like Akko, Yafo, Yatta, Haifa, Nazareth, Bethlehem, Hebron, Shrem, Nablus, Safed, which is Tzfat. 80 to 90% of those Palestinians living in those areas are actually descendants of Jews, even higher amounts in other places. So there is something there to talk about. But the point is that, this piece of land that is today called Jordan is connected to the Palestinians, is connected to the Jews. What if we included that in a future reality? And then there's enough room for everyone.
Extensions. Oh, wow.
Well, it's liberating our land. We're not trying to become something that we're not. We're trying to go back to what we are.
But Jordan is not part of biblical Israel, are we?
It is.
It is.
It is.
Yeah, there are different maps you could look at.
I wouldn't even say biblical. I would say historical Israel.
Yeah, historical.
This was
a kingdom of David.
This was part of our civilization.
And
there's room.
There's
room. Good.
Right. And I'm not saying we should go take lands that we're not connected to be able to expand. I'm saying this is a part of the land that Palestinians and Israelis connect to. Yeah. We can create a civilization that works on the land that we are. But
it's like you I know from your angle you put a lot of responsibility at the foot of Israel to make this happen. But at the same time, I want to move on to this next, but before we run out of time, there's a whole other area I want to talk about. But how much of the responsibility also just lies on the Palestinian leadership to change the way they think about Yahud.
Their leadership is not really their leadership. It's those who control them. I mean,
Yeah.
Hamas is on its 18th year of its 4-year term.
Right.
Palestinian Authority even more. We allow that to exist. And so if you look at Ishmael that is trapped and plagued by this rage of this trauma that was caused onto him, Yitzhak doesn't do it to heal him. He does it because he wants his father. But in doing so, he heals the problem of Ishmael, and that unlocks him and frees him. And we need to free Palestinians as well from their situation.
But you bring a horse to water, can't make him drink. That keeps ringing in my head when you see this effort, which is a beautiful effort and a beautiful vision. But if they don't want it and they just say, no, we just don't want Israel to exist, still, I guess, I mean, you're no stranger to defending.
But just like for us, that at our core, we're not against the idea of a right of return because these are Palestinians, but because we experience it negatively. At their core, they're not against the idea of Israel. The reason that they become against Israel is they're told the reason why you suffer is because Israel exists. And the way that you can get out of that suffering is by destroying Israel. But if you don't suffer anymore...
People got to stop telling them that.
But they have to start experiencing Israel differently. That's what will change it.
Interesting.
No, it's surprising to hear someone who just got back from fighting in Gaza to speak so positively.
You're no idealist peacenik in the sense.
Yeah, you were a target of someone who wanted to kill you, and yet you're still able to maintain this vision. It's
I understand the difference between the symptoms and the source of the problem. You know, Hamas is a symptom of suffering that they face that we're not to be blamed for, but we are supposed to take the responsibility to fix their situation. And you know, I've been fighting for this before the war, during the war, after the war. And I understand what the consequences of those wars look like. You know, I have friends that didn't come back from Gaza. And so I realized that right now we need to take on the responsibility to prevent this problem from happening again and for more people dying. And that's why we need to invest our energy in.
No, to hear you say it, I think you can say that with a bit of authority, that someone who's not literally putting their life on the line can say that. It's wonderful to hear you speak like that.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, on that moving just to this final, we'll close here, but on the idea.